Well, hello folks, and welcome aboard Charis this week. Today I want to talk about a topic that people tend to be curious about when you live on a boat. It's one of those personal topics that I guess not a lot of people discuss on their channels, but anyway, here goes. For starters, I'm off on a boys' weekend out, so the subject of this discussion is less important. There's no one around for me to offend this weekend. Nice and quiet spot. All to myself, no other cruisers. Anyway, I always think about a party that I was at early in my liveaboard life. This was at a friend's house on the harbor, and they had invited all the neighbors, and somehow I made the cut, even though I didn't live in one of the nice mansions on the harbor. But anyway, there I was, and one of the neighbors came over and introduced himself, as people will at a party, and was very quick to tell me that the very nice mansion next door was his, and his first question was, well, where do you live? And I said, oh, just out there. And he said, oh, those houses across the harbor, those are so pretty, I love those houses. I said, no, sir, I live on that black boat halfway across the harbor. And this gentleman, who had done very well for himself in life, and I'm sure was very intelligent, very smart, showed that he was also of somewhat limited conversational creativity, because his next question, without thinking twice, he blurted out, oh, you live on a boat? But how do you bathe? No kidding, that was his second question to a stranger. Now, I was never one to be overly concerned about the politic of my speech, still not. So it didn't take me long thinking about it to look at the gentleman and say, well, I don't. And at that point he, well, let's just say he made like a crab and excused himself and sidled off as quickly as he possibly could, having convinced himself that he'd met the American version of Rasputin, I guess. Anyway, the truth of the matter is, when you live on a boat, the easiest way to bathe is jump over the side. That water is about 46 degrees right now, though, so it's nice to have some other options. And I've shown some of that in my earlier videos, my propane instant hot water heater that I can use with salt water. Today I want to feature one of the first shower mechanisms that I put together when I moved aboard. Now, Charis has always had a pressure water system. She's always had running hot and cold water. But over the years, it's been nice to have auxiliary systems to go with that, either to use less battery power or use less fresh water. So today's idea is one that I would credit Larry and Lynn Pardee with their go early, go simple, go small, go young, something like that philosophy of very simple systems. And that's what I want to present today, although with a couple of minor twists. So this is Captain Obvious with a twist. So what we have here is a pretty typical 2-gallon sprayer. Pump air into the top. The air forces the water up and out through the hose and through a spray wand. This is a spray wand that I have come to like over the years. I use these for a couple of different shower setups. They're available on eBay and Amazon. But anyway, it doesn't really matter how you get the water out of the sprayer. Some people prefer a kitchen sprayer. Those work well. They tend to let the water out very quickly, though, so if you want a relatively fast shower in terms of time with a higher flow, that's better. If you want a longer, slower shower at a lower flow rate, these pesticide sprayers are the trick. So the pesticide sprayer is available at any hardware store. The first nuance from that is that this, when I found it, was known as a deck sprayer. I don't know why, but for some reason you could buy a clear or white plastic pesticide sprayer. Some of them are green. But if you wanted one in black, it was called a deck sprayer. I assume that's still the case, although frankly these are so simple and they last for so long. I haven't bought one in probably 15 years. Anyway, first nuance, that being black, if I set this out in the sun on a nice warm sunny day, essentially what I've got is a solar water heater. So if I want to use this at the end of the day on a hot day, I can set it out in the sun and essentially let the sun do the thermal work for me. So take your standard run-of-the-mill pesticide sprayer, see if you can find a deck sprayer version, and there you go. Otherwise, I assume you could probably get a can of black spray paint and spray paint your pesticide sprayer. It doesn't work quite as well as a sun shower. The thing about the sun shower is that you've got a clear side and black on the inside, so that essentially it's letting the sun pass through the water before it hits the black surface. So this will get warm, though not to the same level as a sun shower might on the same day. So the next simple and obvious way of using this is to essentially pour some or all of the water, depending on how hot you want it, into your stovetop tea kettle. Bring it to a boil or get it as hot as you want it, pour it back in, and boom, simple hot shower. Few moving parts. The only real wear parts on these, there are two O-rings, one that seals the cap and the other that seals the plunger to the sidewalls, and those are easily replaced with hardware store parts. So short of one of these breaking or having some other kind of failure, it's pretty foolproof. So anyway, the kettle is often the go-to choice because you can very quickly heat up, a gallon of water to a boil, pour it in with a gallon of room temperature water, and have a really comfortable temperature shower. And depending on how long a shower you want, I found 2 gallons has always been enough, and usually half of that works if you're being a bit conservative. So the final less than Captain Obvious way of using this is a nuance that I don't use that often, but this is a coffee cup heater. The idea behind this appliance is that you plug it into 110 volt electricity. You take this immersion heater coil and you hang it over the lip of your coffee cup, and it essentially keeps your coffee warm. I honestly don't remember the wattage, although I will look it up and put a link in the video here. But these are I believe it's fairly low. I want to say maybe 200 watts. So the way this works, and you see the corks around it here are intended to keep it floating on the surface of the water in the heater. You essentially plug this in, drop it into the heater, and just let it run until the water gets to the temperature that you desire. Don't try and fly on an airplane with this. It looks a little too much like an IED. That won't end well. Anyway, probably a relatively rare instance for someone to have 110 volt power available for a water heater but not have a water heater built into their boat. Heck, most of this is probably relatively rare nowadays. Everybody's got 50-foot yachts with water makers and 1,000 watts of solar. But back in the day, for those of us that prioritized simplicity and wanted to explore this lifestyle without $1 million in the bank, these were some of the things that allowed me to have more or less have a hot shower anywhere, and to do it with minimal expenditure. The total cash outlay you're looking at here would struggle to hit $50. So essentially, this is the simplest, most anywhere shower that I can think of for any budget, any boat, no matter how small, no matter how simple. And I would add that it's also convenient. The reason this is out today and I decided to do this video today was that I had a couple of spots on deck that I wanted to just rinse some salt off of, and rather than drag out a garden hose and hook it up to my boat freshwater outlet here, I just pulled this out and used it for a quick rinse. So simplicity. It's not for everybody, but when I find ways of sharing it, I like to do so. And so that's this week's little boat life hack. And as I say, semi-Captain Obvious, but maybe out there somewhere there's someone who looks at that and goes, yeah, I could benefit from that. So thanks for coming aboard this week. And if you enjoy the video, give it a like, maybe a share, and we'll see you next week.